Welcome to The Current Potential, the podcast where healing, aligned living, and intention meet the deeper current of who we are. I'm your host, Melissa Curtin. Here we explore holistic health, mind, body, heart wisdom, empowering stories, and what's current in natural healing, all to help you reconnect with your own inner current and potential. Welcome to this episode of The Current Potential. I'm your host, Melissa Curtin. For this episode, it is such a gift to be here with Claire Wilbur, who is gracious enough to share her healing process that's a work in progress with us all. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode today.
Hello, Melissa. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you. I so appreciate you. Before we jump into the topic of maneuvering through chronic illness and how that looks different for each person, I'd love for you to introduce yourself to the listeners.
Sure. My name is Claire Wilbur, and I'm the wife of Joe Wilbur, daughter Scarlett, and son Bear. We've got a 13 and 11-year-old, and we just moved to Tennessee. So things have been new for us and exciting and exhausting, but really exciting. We are just navigating life with homeschooling and building community here. And gosh, that's kind of it.
Well, that sounds like a lot, adjusting, transitioning to a new state, and homeschooling in itself is a full-time job and raising children.
It is.
In addition to being a mom and a wife and relocating and having a full schedule homeschooling, are there any fun activities, or are you weaving anything enjoyable there in Tennessee that you're doing for fun, anything that you're passionate about?
That's a really good question. That's actually probably part of my problem, is that I'm not weaving in enough fun or passions. I did recently start an etiquette class. So about four months ago or 3 months ago, I'd been thinking about this for quite some time, and it just kind of came to me in the middle of the night, one of my sleepless nights. And I just thought, I need to do that class. And the next morning I woke up and just kind of started throwing it together. And today was actually our last class. So that felt like a huge accomplishment to do, especially we're going to be talking about being chronically ill. It was a big accomplishment in a season of just not feeling well. So I don't know that I'd say I'm passionate about etiquette, but it's certainly something that was an interest of mine that I really wanted to instill in my kids and community. And it was fun to take it from my head into reality. And so but I do need to be weaving in a whole lot more fun and passions. My son helps with, he loves Michael Jackson. So we do a lot of Michael Jackson moves in the house, and I would say dancing in the house is probably our let loose fun time.
Oh, that sounds like so much fun.
Oh, for sure.
And the class sounds fun.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
You know, hey, we could all use more etiquette and table manners and good old-fashioned politeness at the table. I mean, beyond where the forks and the knives go, right? I'm so glad you're doing that.
And I have a lot to learn myself as well in that. So I'm certainly not speaking from a professional. I'm learning alongside all the training. So
as a mother and wife, there's so much to be responsible for and manage. And it's common to put our health on the back burner and get depleted. What has been your experience with health and motherhood?
Gosh, well, I didn't really think much about this until I really started thinking about it in my health as a kid and just through high school and my 20s. Looking back, I think I was pretty tired, which is ironic because I was in some of the hardest sports. I did gymnastics for 10 years and springboard diving and track and field and excelled in those. And I did it, but I remember just feeling really tired, and anything with a lot of cardio was difficult. So I was certainly not doing track as like a long distance runner or anything. It was more like jumping, like the shorter bursts. So I did feel quite tired. I remember in my 20s feeling quite fatigued, but I thought it was just, in your 20s and you're living life pretty hard and not getting enough sleep. And I was working 2 jobs and just all that. And then it wasn't really until after I had kids was when I felt like everything really declined quite rapidly. And there was a lot going on at that time that I think kind of just the straw that broke the camel's back. Well, I don't know if there was one straw. I guess I should say it felt like there were many layers and many things going on, and my body just couldn't do it anymore.
So I appreciate you sharing your health challenges in your 20s and then hitting the motherhood era there and having the challenges kind of come to a head. Can you share a little bit about what your health was like as a child and any struggles that you encountered along the way?
I think the more I realize that what I'm really dealing with is like nervous system issues. I grew up with a mom that was pretty far on the spectrum for narcissism. And I think I just was walking on eggshells for most of my childhood without really even knowing it. And when you kind of grow up like that, it's almost like your body is conditioned to be alert and aware and on guard. And then through like high school, I just remember really feeling this sense of needing to meet expectations. And I would say it was like my senior year of high school. I was probably like a narcissist dream daughter. I was homecoming queen and went to state in all my athletics. And I felt like I was this proud flag that my mom could wave. And that year I had lost a little bit of weight and was just being healthy. But that kind of came after my mom had said to me, like, don't gain any more weight. That really stuck with me. So that threw me into like an eating disorder. And that lasted until my early 20s. And I got help for that. But that was just, there was just so much. It just felt like pressure to be perfect and pressure to perform and pressure to be a certain way. And it's almost like you're growing up trying to please somebody else and you are kind of dying to who God made you to be, really. It's like you're just kind of stuffing that all aside to be who this person needs you to be and to keep yourself kind of safe at the same time. And so that was I think that kind of set the stage for the health stuff. And then in my 20s, like I said, I had gotten some help with the eating disorder stuff. But that kind of thread of perfectionism still is, I would say, with me today. And that's something that I'm kind of trying to shed. But it's, like we say, it's a journey. Then in my early 30s. So when I was 31, I got married, and then we had our daughter shortly after that. And I had just kind of broken up with my family of origin. So we just stopped talking. We had kind of a blow up, and they didn't ever meet my husband, never met my children. And I think when I had my first child, I just had so much grief because this is not the life that I thought I was going to have. I did not think that I was going to not have my family in my life. So there was like everything I felt like came to a head. I wasn't sleeping. I didn't have proper support. We didn't have family in our life. So like just there supporting us. I was grieving my family. Like I said, wasn't sleeping. And then I just started kind of spiraling. And then I had my son, and then things just started to progressively get worse. And I started getting just random pain. And I remember it started in my upper back. And I just thought, I need to go to the chiropractor. And then that wasn't helping. And then it got so bad, I went to the ER, and, they didn't find anything. And it was just a progression of going and getting help, but nobody could help me. And yeah, so it was just, and there's a lot more I can expand on that, but I want to give you a chance to ask me something else if you need to.
Oh, no, thank you. It's fascinating to me. I mean, reflecting back, it's amazing how our bodies are mirrors and profound teachers of our emotional, mental, spiritual states during different points in our lives. Can you share any parallels, to this early trauma and stress and illness and this mind, body, spirit relationship through what you've navigated through?
Oh, 100%. I think that the longer I've been in this and all the things that I've tried, the more I'm convinced that it's not that I'm not taking enough supplements or that I'm not getting enough chiropractic or not doing the right detoxes or whatever it is. I think that because I've done so many of those things, I think that what I've come to the conclusion is that there's a deep-seated nervous system issue going on. And I also think that there's a lot of lies that I'm still working out, just sort of the lies that you grew up believing about yourself that are just sort of ingrained, or your way of thinking. And so I did stumble across this one program called DNRS, and I think it's called Dynamic Neuro Retraining System. And essentially it's retraining the mind, and because there's such a connection between our mind and our nervous system. So if you're in chronic fear, chronic worry, or chronic stress, that's going to affect your immune system. And I think I was just living in that chronic state for so long. And our immune system is this awesome gate that if we're functioning well, the immune system is closed, or it's like the gate's closed. It's not letting it's protecting you. And I think when you're in such a bad state for so long, it just it becomes weak and weak and weak, and it just opens you to being more susceptible to things. And I think that just over the course of time, it couldn't hold all the burden, the toxic burden, the oxidative stress, the mental load. You know what I mean? It felt like it just was I can't hold this back anymore. We're getting sick.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, and all of that with the nervous system, then it's fight or flight and fawn, and it's all connected and all related. So as an adult, when did you notice that you were in the throes of chronic illness, and what specifically were you addressing health-wise, if you'd like to share?
Sure. So we had moved to another town. This is when we were in Washington. And I met a friend, a girl, this lady, and she said, your symptoms sound like Lyme disease. And I was like, you know what? That sounds familiar, because at this point, you're already looking up everything it could possibly be that you're dealing with. That was definitely on the radar. And I had gone and gotten tested, and, the tests are not very good or very accurate. And it didn't show that I had Lyme, but I did get tested for mold illness, because I said, what else can you test me for? Because all my labs keep coming up normal. Everything seems fine, but I am absolutely not fine. I'm in chronic pain every day. I'm exhausted. My brain fog is, just things that aren't normal. They make you feel like, oh, you're fine, and you're not. And so I said, what other tests can I do? And so we did a mold panel, and I did some crazy tests. I can't even remember all of them. Heavy metals, all the things. And so I kind of had a picture of, okay, you've got Lyme didn't come on the scene yet. That was a couple of years later. Mold was a thing. And so I was just doing some sweating. They say go sit somewhere and sweat, or just sweat. So I got this sweat box from Amazon and just tried to sweat. And, it's just when you're trying to do life with kids and your wife and all the things, it's really hard to do all these protocols because you're exhausted. And doing all these protocols really feels like a full-time job. And as a mom and wife, you already have a full-time job. So it's like you're chronically sick and you're working two jobs, and it just feels impossible. And okay, so then we can fast forward a little bit. So we decided to homeschool. And after that year, I'm not saying it was the homeschooling that did it. I think it was I was so tired and so stressed and feeling like I wasn't meeting everybody's needs. I was just really struggling. And I felt like I was on the brink of having like a mental breakdown. And I didn't know what that would really look like if it happened, because you hear these horror stories of people they go off the deep end and then never come back. And mental illness runs in my mom's side of the family. And so I thought, oh gosh, I need to get help before something happened. So we ended up finding this great Christian inpatient facility in Florida. And I went there for a month, and it was great in the sense that it really helped kind of recenter things, just like in a Christ-centered perspective. So like focusing on like who you are in Christ and that you're loved, and everything kind of like pointed back to biblical principles, and everything was great, but I was changing. But when I got back home after that month, nothing changed at home. So essentially I did all this work, felt better, was doing better, but if your environment doesn't change, that's really hard. So it was sort of like, oh, I got a great month to essentially recover and come home. And it was just kind of a progression of slipping back into not feeling well again, because I was coming back to having no support. So I'm gone away for a month, having my meals cooked, having time praying every day, just you're getting fueled, you're getting filled up, you're getting nourished. And then you go home and it just starts to slowly just kind of chip away. And they had medicated me. So they put me on like 4 pharmaceuticals. And if you know me, you know that I'm like wildly like against pharma. So the fact that I surrendered when I was there was like, whatever you need to put me on, just do it, because I just want to feel better. And after I got back, I realized like I actually wasn't depressed when I was there. I was realizing, gosh, I was just really tired and I was burnt out. And I didn't go there because I was suicidal. I didn't go there because I was harming myself or anybody else. And when I was there, they kept questioning me like, well, have you thought about, killing yourself? And it's like, no, but I'm really tired. And there's days where I wish I could just be home with God because this is just exhausting. But it wasn't like, I wasn't suicidal, if that even makes sense. You're just like, I'm just so tired. Can we just be done with this? So I really quickly realized while I was there that I was fine mentally. And it was funny because the staff there thought that I worked there. So I was just helping everybody like, hey, what do you need? Like, here's the breakfast place. Here's the, this is where you need to get all your things. And do you work? I'm like, no. And so, but it's like, I was fine. It was more just, I'm not doing well and I need a minute, and also dealing with chronic illness.
Not to make light of it, but during your breaking point and all this is unfolding, you're still helping people at this inpatient place.
I can't not. It's so hard to turn off. And I struggle with that. And I think also, because it was really funny, when I was there, they said, like, you definitely deal with perfectionism. And I think, which is, okay, so I was a flight attendant. I was these things where it's like, when you show up, you're on, right? You have to do the like, hi, welcome aboard. You're very... So I can be that person. And I realize that like I carry that with me everywhere I go, and nobody knows that I'm sick. Nobody knows, because I don't want to show up sick. I don't want to show up being a burden to anybody. So I can be out at church. I can be out to dinner with people, which I don't do very often, but you wouldn't know it because I can pull it together. I can put myself together. But if you saw me at home Monday through Saturday, I don't look put together. When I'm home, my family sees the worst of me. And I definitely put on, I don't want to say a facade, but it's like, I don't want to be a burden to anybody when I leave the house. So I usually don't want to say save it for when I get home, but I can turn off when I'm home. So I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. Can you share a little bit more when you were released from the Florida Christian clinic or inpatient place. And then you went home and you're stepping back into the old patterns, like you've changed and you felt rested, rejuvenated in some ways, maybe not healed all the way, but rested. I mean, it sounds like you were, being chronically exhausted and getting to that point. And I know you're very holistic. For you to be like, give me what you feel I need, regardless what it is huge. I mean, that talk about the ultimate surrender for someone that is very natural and holistic and all of that. But then coming home and then recognizing, like having this greater level of awareness that you're shifting, but your surroundings, your environment needed to shift also. What did you do at that point?
I think, well, honestly, my husband ended up getting help. There was just, and here's another little tidbit to the issue. I think, like I said, it's many, many layers of many, many different things that are affecting, I think, everybody. And one of the layers was, when my husband and I got married, from a Christian perspective, we kind of did everything backwards. And that took a toll on our marriage. And we entered the marriage, he was more passive and I was more like a leader type role. And women are not typically built, and I want to be careful when I say this because I feel like men and women are equal, but they complement each other. A man cannot do some of the stuff that a woman can do, and a woman cannot do some of the stuff that a man can do, period. Physically, we are just not capable. And there are certain emotional, mental stressors that I would say women aren't supposed to be holding either. And I think that it can just be too much for our shoulders and too much for our frame, and men are built differently. And so I think that there was a component of the passivity where I was taking on more of the masculine role than I should have, and I couldn't bear the weight. And so it's been a journey of kind of like putting things back into order, if that makes sense, and carrying like the appropriate loads that we should be carrying as husband and wife. I mean, that's helped a ton, and just the emotional burden that it's relieved. So there's that component. So when I got back, Joe went and got help. He started talking to like a Christian counselor, and so that was really helpful. It's been an unraveling and just kind of a slow process of figuring it out as we go. And it's like you're constantly turning over rocks and realizing, oh, this is, potentially contributing. And I think the one area that we can't seem to really solve is sort of just like the support from like the grandparents that I wish we would have had. And humans are not really meant to do life alone. And we need a tribe and we need a support system because it's too hard. It's like, we just can't do it all. We can't do it all for our children. We can't, we're meant to have grandparents pouring into the children. We're meant to have these outside influences, good influences, someone to, because a mom and a dad, you just can't do all the things all the time. And so I think that has been probably the piece that has been the hardest, but I also wouldn't wish, I wish I had the parents that I needed, because I wouldn't necessarily want them filling that role as they are. Yeah. So we've just and we never really had babysitters very often. So it's always just Joe and I tag teaming over the years and not really getting adequate breaks or rest. And so it's been a very beautiful process, a sanctifying process. I mean, we're a super close family because we don't spend really any time apart.
But then also when you're dealing with chronic illness and chronic exhaustion, on top of being hypervigilant, independent, and based on your upbringing, and then going into a marriage and naturally being a leader and taking on all of that, I mean, that's not a burden, but more than one should and necessarily take on, right?
Well, right. And it's so funny because how I met you was during a time where I was deeply involved in Informed Choice Washington and doing the nonprofit.
we're both involved in the health freedom movement, which is exhausting and empowering, and every emotion possible rolled up into a ball, right?
Yes. And I think the weight of, I remember how much people hated me. Like there was people that I got just nasty messages, and that was it was super fun. It was such a great time. I felt super called to do that at that time in my life. And then there was a moment where I really clearly felt God call me out of it because it was becoming a little bit too much of my identity. And I needed to focus on my kids and focus on that stuff. So I stepped away from that nonprofit. But that was also like in the mix. So I'm doing all this stuff while not feeling good. And it's really a hard time shutting off and shutting down and saying no to things. Like I'm horrible at it. It's hard for me because I keep thinking I am this able-bodied person and I look able-bodied. I will go to the gym even if it kills me because in my mind, I'm thinking, well, I got to keep the muscle because, if you fall when you're older and break your hip, your chances of dying go up. So I got to keep the muscle mass on. So it's like you do all these, even though you feel like you're too exhausted to do it, but you do it anyway.
Yeah, so you're going through like these intense health issues. You were very active in a nonprofit and being one of the leaders and voices in the health freedom movement, like all at the same time. And then it's like struggling through your health stuff, and I can relate because that was part of my journey too back then. And then being not consumed by the fear, right? More to fix, just the layers upon layers. And I know that in our previous conversation, you talked about not wanting to focus on what's wrong all the time. And you shared with me that you felt like you were stuck in the knowledge of all the crunchy things. I think that was your phrase. Do you want to share a little bit more about that and then your exit of that movement and the focus after?
Right. So I think it's such a slippery slope. And sometimes I wonder, I would say I'm definitely on the side more so of crunchy, but sometimes I do feel like just like the Democrats and the Republicans, it feels sometimes like they're just on the same coin, just the different side of it. Like they each have their pitfalls. And I feel like that with, what would you call it? Like the pharmaceutical side versus the non-pharmaceutical side, the crunchy side. So I remember feeling like I'm not going to touch pharmaceuticals. And then I did. It helped and then it didn't help. And so there's that. And then there's the crunchy side, which is take all the supplements, do all the detoxes. I went to this clinic in Idaho called the West Clinic, and that's where I found out that I had late stage Lyme disease and what is it? MECFS.
MCAS? Not mast cell activation syndrome.
There's that. It was like ME-CFS. It stands for chronic fatigue syndrome. So I did the high dose vitamin C infusions. I went there, spent like $5,000 to go do that. And I ended up getting a ton of supplements. I got sick off of all the supplements because I was taking too many. They had me on too many. And so I was getting supplement fatigue. And then I took a break and then I started working with this other practitioner and it was the detoxes. We tested the house for mold and then now I'm freaking out about mold and I'm freaking out about food and this is not how things are supposed to be. We're not supposed to be fearing because fearing starts messing with the immune system and it starts to make you crazy. And I just kind of had to step away from that because I got to a point where I thought for sure to avoid mold, I was going to have to go live in a tent in the middle of Sedona or something, right? And that's what the experts were saying. You need to get a tent, change your tent out every month so it's not getting moldy. I mean, just crazy stuff. There's all the things and the stacking the protocols and the red light therapies. And it's just I can't keep up with this. And it almost feels as though the more you're focusing on yourself, the more you're focusing on your symptoms, the more you're telling your body that you're sick. It's almost like you're signaling to it that you're broken. The more I'm trying to fix myself, Like, I'm broken. I had to step away from that because it was not good. It was not good for the mental health.
No, it's not at all. And it's important to recognize, like you said, how much fear and being fearful and the energy of fear is oppressive, and it's damaging and affects our immune system. There's things that I'm concerned about and there's things that I focus on, but I try my best to have an empowering approach or solution. But it also sounds like in the midst of all of what you were feeling, you were doing a multitude of healing modalities. Not much was helping remedy what was going on because there were multiple compounding issues on top of issues that you were unraveling and unpacking. Was there anything that you tried that you felt like it was successful or gave you relief for one or a number of things?
Well, it's not typically what maybe a lot of people would mention or say. Maybe not, maybe I'm wrong, but as a believer in God and Jesus, honestly, like I had to start. We put so much hope in this world, and we put so much hope in the things and doing the thing and taking the supplements. And I was realizing that, I believe in God, and I believe that Jesus died for us, and I believe that I will be healed because this life is not it. And there's so many examples in the Bible where people suffered. And there was Paul who, quote, had a thorn in his side during his whole ministry. And the reason for that thorn was it kept him centered, and it kept him close to God, and it kept him having a purpose. And I know that this life is just a vapor. And so I know that healing is coming, and it might be in this life, but I know for sure it's going to be in the next life. And so I think the thing that I have hope in is that I already know that healing is coming. And so it's, what am I going to do while I'm here dealing with this chronic illness? And last Sunday, I think I texted you, our pastor had spoke on a man in the Bible. And it was, I think in John 9:3 was talking about this man who was blind his whole life. And the Pharisees had said something, is he blind because of his parents' sin or because of something he did? As if it were almost like a karmic thing, some sort of karma coming back to get him from a past life or whatever. And it wasn't that at all. It was so that so he became healed. So God, or Jesus, he took the mud, put mud in his eyes and said, go wash your eyes in the water. And he washed his eyes and he had his sight, and he had faith and he had obedience, and God allowed him to be blind because that was his purpose, if that makes sense. So it was like the whole message of the sermon was stop focusing on the cause and focus on the purpose. We're not given the cause of the suffering. We are given the purpose. And so sometimes we're searching, what is the cause of this? What caused this? We're looking for the test result. We're looking for whatever it is. And sometimes I don't think it is in the test results. It can be. I think it can be black and white like that. But I think for people that are suffering a long-term chronic thing where it doesn't seem that anything else is happening, I think people might need to stop and think, what is the purpose of this? What is changing inside of me? Because I think I said to you on the phone, I think what's happening is I'm starting to heal from the inside out. I'm starting to heal the inside stuff, the junk that came from my family of origin, the stuff, that has just been, I came into this world and it's almost like I'm going through this birth canal, being rebirthed into what God created me to be, not what I had to be to survive. And I think it's a sanctifying process. I hope I articulated that in a way that made sense.
Absolutely. So, it sounds like the faith that you'll be physically healed, right, is coming, but what's shifting right now is the mind-spirit shift. You are really feeling that. And I wanted to back up because it sounds like the question I had before you answered it was going to be like, where have you landed now? Like during this healing process, like what's working for you? So it sounds like I could guess, right? Surrendering to God.
It really is. I mean, it's truly a surrender, and it's a daily surrender, because there are days where it's so easy to fall into like the victim mindset of like, oh Lord, why are you allowing this? Or why? But also, and I know this is for sure coming from like a biblical perspective, but like if we have a good father, even our earthly father, if he's a good earthly father, he will allow his children to go through discomfort for a greater purpose, for their good, right? So as a parent, even just as a mother, there are times where I'm like, oh man, I know this is going to be really rough on my kid, but this is going to grow them so much. This is going to be so good for them.
Right. That's a good point. Yeah.
When we don't do those things for our children, it's not loving. And so I have to look at it from that frame, through that viewpoint. And so, like I said, there's so much hope in that. I already know that healing's coming, so I can hope in that and be reassured that forever is not here on earth. I don't believe that, we die and it's just black and that's it. Because I think that if that were the case, that would be pretty grim to think that I got to figure it out while I'm here, because then you're wasting your whole life stressing out about finding the cause and all that stuff. I just think that the hope, I mean, it's going to sound like a sermon, but it's like the hope is in God. The hope is in Jesus. It's the hope is in knowing that it's coming, when you believe. And so there's a couple of verses in Romans that I love. And one of them is, for I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that is to be revealed to us. The glory is coming. The glory is coming. And then the other one is, we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance. Endurance produces character, and character produces hope. So who doesn't want character, right? Who doesn't want these things? There's so many people that go through this and they come out the other side. And ironically, they'll say, I wouldn't wish that away because I grew so much during that time. There's this lady that I listened to a podcast, and it's not like a faith podcast or anything, just people that are sharing their stories. And it's interesting because so many of them I've listened to, I can't even tell you, because I just needed it during that time. I needed to listen to these stories of recovery over and over and over just to get some hope. And all of them, I mean, whether they were suffering for 2 years or 2 decades, not a single one of them said, I wish that didn't happen to me. Every single one of them came out of it saying, I learned so much and I'm so grateful for that time. And I think it's trying to have that perspective of being grateful for the trial, because it produces so much, and there's so much internal healing that might be taking place that we're forgetting about, because it's not maybe just all the external. There's so much more to us than just our bodies.
Mm-hmm. I can relate, and actually some guests prior to this episode with you have all shared very similar perspectives. And I think that's part of having an awakening or using a wake-up call for growth, using the wake-up call or the gift through the challenge or the trial or whatever it is as a way to create awareness, healing, and not like, I don't regret what I went through. It made me who I am today, the physical things that I've navigated. And I feel like that is such an inspiring message for people to hear, because you will get through. You don't know how it's going to look or how it's going to unfold. You will. With your faith, it sounds like it's really driving this healing.
Yeah, I think it's like, when you were asking me, what books have you read or what has helped you and I'm just thinking, gosh, the books I've read, the things I've consumed via video and all the things around this stuff, like which one helped you? And it's like they all helped give me, I guess, a better idea of maybe what was going on in a physical type standpoint, but it really left out the spiritual component because we're not just body. They don't really talk about, it's like, oh, you've got mold, you need to detox mold. You've got this, you need to do this. And I'm like, well, there's probably a lot of people out there that are living healthy lives that if you were to give them tests for a lot of the stuff I was tested for, they might have it too. It's just that their immune system is so intact that it's not surfacing for them. And I think that the mind is such a crucial part of the healing that doctors aren't even, maybe some are talking about, but they are not addressing it. And there's even, I believe that science is catching up to the Bible, because now the new science is like, oh, the nervous system is the issue, and what's going on with the nerves. Well, what are we thinking about? What is our mind? And in the Bible, it talks about renewing your mind. It talks about changing the neural pathways with, not those exact words, but it's renewing the mind and focusing on what is true. And we're believing lies. I'm to this, I'm to that. I am, whatever it is, you can insert your own personal thing. And if we were to really take an account of what we speak to ourselves in our mind, can just be terrible. And I have to stop myself in the middle of the day and think, what are you thinking about? That's not true. That's not what God says about you. That's not how he created you. This is coming from, the enemy. This is not of God. And so I think the Bible and learning the truths. So I would say the life raft has been, the Bible, the word of God, and having my hope in that. I think at the end of the day, when you're not getting any hope from what the world has to offer, the Bible has been my life raft and keeping me afloat, because I have to go back to it all the time to remember God's promises for my life. And there's just nothing else here for me right now, and so it's like my job right now has been trying to take my thoughts captive and renewing my mind and trying to rest and trying not to stress myself out. When I was at church on Sunday, there was a lady in our church who was also suffering very similar symptoms and conditions as I have. And I found her and I said, hey, are you the lady that's struggling with chronic health issues? And she said, yes. Are you the other one? And I said, yes. And we just hugged and cried. And she said something to me. She said a quote. It was, health is a crown that only the sick can see. And I thought that was such a good visual, because I think people who are healthy don't realize the beautiful crown of health that they have. And there's a level of just gratitude and appreciation. So like when you're not feeling well, most every single day of your life, and you have a day or two of somewhat normalcy, you are so grateful. And the gratitude, you walk through that day that you're so thankful for the sky. You're so thankful to not have that one joint pain going on. You're so thankful. There's just such a depth, and and I think it's a really lonely road.
Yes, to be grateful for our health when we are healthy and feeling healthy and embodying health. I appreciate those days also. Let's talk about a topic that rarely gets the attention it needs. You look fine, and the assumption that just because the health issues or the issues one is dealing with isn't visible or noticeable to others, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I mean, the expectations, right, of being a high achiever and high functioning are all tied into this. And then still, during your chronic illness and struggles, still doing, like trying to achieve and do and be. Can you share more about your experience with chronic illness from this perspective, that you look fine?
Oh gosh, I think this is such a tough one. I'm really curious about how many other people out there are walking around that look fine, that are not fine. And so it automatically makes me think about that if I can pull it off, I wonder how many other people are pulling it off too. When you show up, when you're chronically ill and you show up to something, you maybe didn't do anything the days leading up to that event because you were saving your energy to make it to that thing. So my goal every week is to make it to church. I missed church 2 weeks in a row and I just felt awful. But that goes to say, it's like, that's how bad I was that I couldn't even make it to church. And that's the one thing that I try to save my energy for every week. So when I show up to church, I've got my makeup on, I've got my nice church clothes on, I'm smiling. Someone says, "How are you doing?" I'm great. How are you doing? It's like, I don't even mean to, but it's like the flight attendant comes on. And I think it's automatically the, you don't want to burden, or at least that's how I feel, is I don't want to burden someone by being like, "Oh, I'm doing okay," or it's just such a downer type thing. And then it just brings the focus back to you, and then questions start coming, and then people kind of start looking at you like, "Oh, well, you look fine," or it's like, right, it was really hard for me to get here today, and I'm really tired, and I'm probably going to crash when I get home. And so it is tough. It's really tough. So it's like, when you do show up in the world, I know that for those people, it took a lot of effort and energy for them to get there. And I think it's tough because even my husband, who I'm married to, I think it's hard for him to even like wrap his mind around it, because there's like, if I'm up and about and doing something, it's like, "Oh, mom's out of bed. That means she has energy to do this." Or, "Oh, mom's." So it's this weird dynamic where, oh, wait, if I sound and project my voice in a way that makes me sound halfway with it or look halfway normal, everybody thinks you're automatically good to go and you're fine, business as usual. And then it's like, no, I'm not, but I also don't want to be walking around lonely and depressing in order to get that point across all the time. So it's almost like you feel like you need to wear a shirt that says, "I look fine, but I'm not okay." So it's a tough one. I think that if you don't have crutches or a cast or a visual for people that are dealing with, like, because we've contemplated going like the disability route with me, because it can be very disabling. But I just didn't want to. I didn't want to put that name on me. I didn't want to wear that I have that. So it's this tough, tricky thing where you feel like you need to explain yourself, but you're also trying to speak positive words over yourself, because I feel like our words have power.
Absolutely. They definitely do.
So how do you tell someone you're not good without telling them you're not good? It's really tough. Friendships are really hard. I don't think people know what to do with it. I recently had somebody say, have you thought about getting a job, as though that would cure things. It's a tough one. And the lady at church and I, we were it's like we found each other and just embraced, because we both knew that nobody else understands what we're going through. Nobody else gets it. And it's hard, like I said, even when it's like your own husband or close friends. And it's a bizarre situation.
Mm-hmm. And those are the external, right? The external people. And I know in an earlier conversation, you shared this idea of actually gaslighting ourselves when it comes to health. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, for one, there was a program that I was doing, and I still might continue with it. I haven't had the bandwidth. I haven't had the energy to do it. But essentially, and I don't disagree with it. It's really renewing the mind. It's rewiring the brain. And so you take time to think about, positive things, a positive future, maybe rewriting something in the past and making it more of a positive experience. I've kind of tweaked some of it to fit what I think I should be doing with it, but essentially almost like you're gaslighting yourself into denying that you're sick. And so you're not supposed to speak of it. You're supposed to tell everybody around you not to ask, "How did you sleep last night? How are you feeling?" Because it kind of brings up your issue. It brings back to surface, like, will have to say, I didn't sleep very good, or I'm not feeling very good today. So it's making it so your brain is going back. So the idea is kind of like, it's not called gaslighting, but it almost feels like you're gaslighting yourself into trying to feel better. And I think without that program, I think I've tried to just gaslight myself into like, you know what, I am going to just wake up today and I'm going to behave as though I'm healthy and act like a normal person and do all the things that a normal person would do. And I just can't do it. I just can't do it. I physically do it. And there is a lot of gaslighting that goes on, I think, with yourself. And I think other people tend to also question what's going on with you, because they might see you doing something one day and then be like, well, why couldn't you do this again? Or why can't you do this tomorrow? It feels like the lazy, crazy disease, because you just seem lazy and crazy.
Well, you don't seem lazy and crazy to me. You are very authentic. I know that you've been working toward optimal health for a while. I feel like it sounds like it's been a true gift for you just to surrender it over to God. Really, like you said, you cannot do another supplement, another protocol, another thing. I mean, sure, there's certain things that might relieve certain symptoms, but overall, that whole process is exhausting also.
It really is.
So to wrap up, I know you mentioned some Bible phrases and some different quotes earlier. Is there anything else or any words of wisdom that you want to share for the listeners that may be navigating through chronic illness or chronic health issues that might be helpful for them from what because you're in the thick of it still, you're not out of the woods as you shared. Would you like to share?
Yeah, I think that as time goes on, I think that I'm learning to be a whole lot kinder and gentler to myself. And I would just encourage people to just give themselves grace. I would encourage people to think kindly about themselves, to really think about what their thought life is and if it's good for their body. A lot of times we could be thinking things that are just destroying our bodies without even realizing it. And I think also it just comes to mind, just forgiveness, forgiving those who may not truly get it, and just have grace for yourself and grace for others as you walk it out. And yeah, that's what I would say. I also love this Proverbs. It says, a joyful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones. So it talks to the effects of a joyful heart, what it will have on the body. And so I think there is something to that. So keeping our minds in alignment with the truth.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I would love for you to share more about how you feel your healing and health challenges and your journey tie into your life's purpose.
Oh, wow. That's a really good question. I think that if you don't slow down, your body is going to force you to. And I think that this has forced me to slow down and really take the time to reevaluate what I'm doing. And like I said, what I'm thinking about. And I think my life's purpose right now has been just trying to raise my children up in a way that they don't have to suffer the way that I did. And pointing them to the Bible and pointing them to truth. And because at the end of the day, I am not a perfect person, but God is. So if I can point them to Him, all the better. And that is my life's purpose, is to just raise them up in the way they should go. And I think that would be just a huge blessing for them for years to come.
Yes, most definitely. Anyway, I have deep gratitude for you being my guest today, and I appreciate you being vulnerable and being willing to share your healing journey and process. And of course, I wish all the best for you, and know that through the seeking process, you are actively discovering what this healing and this next reiteration looks like for you through God and this path. And I think that's such a beautiful gift for yourself and to share that with other people and give them a little glimpse of what's happening inside Claire's world. Is there anything else you'd like to share?
I don't think so.
Thank you, Claire. And to our listeners, we appreciate you joining us for this conversation and episode on chronic illness. The hope is in God. Thank you for tuning into the Current Potential podcast. If this conversation resonated, inspired your next step, or you know someone this episode can benefit, please share, subscribe, and find me on Instagram at The Current Potential for new episodes and related content, and on my website, melissacurtin.com. Until next time, be aligned, stay connected to your inner wisdom, and follow the current that supports your potential.